Good evening and welcome to tonight's edition of Fact Sheet live on ETV, live on Nisim 95.9 in Bogotanga and 100.1 in Tamale as well, live on Facebook. You're welcome here. If it's not a fact, we don't discuss them. And so we take away the emotions and then we deal with the facts. As we all know, facts are always sacred, and so that's where our focus always lies. Tonight, if we're here, then we are talking about a very sensitive matter which has gotten Ghana talking. It has to do with those who believe that fundamental rights of some people are being infringed upon, those who believe that the rights of individuals and their values ought to be protected, and so there's been that back and forth in the media. We have seen prominent people in our society for and against this particular subject matter we are about discussing tonight. And it has to do with the LGBTQI plus bill, which is in Parliament, and members of Parliament are going to debate on that. So far, it's beginning to look like both the majority and minority in Parliament are for this bill. But we have some lawyers, others, key activists in this country who believe that this law would infringe the rights of Ghanaians if it's passed into a law. Some who believe some elements of the law should be looked at, as in the end, it may come back to bite all of us. And so tonight we're talking about the promotion of proper human sexual rights and Ghanaian family values bill, which is in Parliament. We would have people who have been advocating for this bill and those who have been advocating for its removal join me on the show tonight to discuss these matters. My name is Samuel Ishen, and I welcome you to tonight's edition of Fact Sheet. As always, we'll just go for a quick commercial break. When we come back, we will take a look at it. But if you've been following the conversation on this matter, the international community has been speaking. We've had world platforms, CNN, BBC, and co, speaking on this matter of the rights of LGBT folks in our country. There are those who are thinking about the ramifications for us as a nation if we pass this into a law. Now, they are thinking about how Bretton Woods institutions have been to our aid when COVID-19 struck. The billions of dollars we are getting from the IMF and co. Would we get them if we pass this law, this bill into a law? There are those who are thinking about the support we are getting in terms of the COVID-19 vaccines we have been receiving from, our partners if we go ahead to pass this bill into a law. Should we be concerned and hasten slowly in passing this bill into a law? We'll take a look at all the angles even as we delve deeper into this matter. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, I'll introduce my guest to you and then we set the ball rolling. Welcome back to Fact Sheet live on ETV, live on Nisim 95.9, live on Facebook and Twitter as well. Our handle is ETV Ghana. We encourage you, if you're watching the show live on Facebook, to share the link to groups and platforms you belong to so others may also know and join the conversation as we discuss this very thorny matter tonight. So my guests tonight are the Honorable Samuel Nate George, who is the Member of Parliament for Ningo Pampam. He'll be joining us via phone. We have Vabene Elikem Fiache, who is a board member, LGBTI rights and an artist, and then Most Reverend Philip Name, who is President Catholic Bishops Conference. He will be joining us for our conversation tonight. But to set the ball rolling, I would like for us to begin by trying to have an understanding and appreciation of what is triggering this whole conversation about this whole LGBTI Q plus and bill that we are talking about. And so I would read the object of this bill that is before Parliament, and then it will set the tone for the conversation. So the promotion of proper human sexual rights and Ghanaian family values bill 2021. Now, the sponsors of the bill say that this is the reason for which they are proposing that this bill be, ratified into a law. They say that the object of the bill is to provide for proper human sexual rights and Ghanaian family values, prescribe LGBTQ plus and related activities, prescribe propaganda of, advocacy for, or promotion of LGBTQI IAAP Plus and related activities provide for the protection and support for children, persons who are victims or accused of LGBTQI IAAP Plus and related activities and other persons and related matters. So this is what is pushing them to put this bill before Parliament for us to have this debate in the first place. They are talking about moral values, they are talking about the protection of our family values, and the protection of our young ones, that's children. And so I'll set the ball rolling by inviting Verbena Elikem Fiache to have the conversation with her, because she is an activist, she is an advocate, and she's been speaking vehemently on this matter as to the rights and freedoms of people tagged as being gay or lesbians or any of the other letters that you may add. Elikem, good evening and thanks so much for joining us tonight on the show. All right, Elikem is joining us via Zoom, and so I'll try once again to try and make contact with her. Elikem, good evening and thanks so much for joining us. All right, it looks like we're having a line, but we'll try and make contact and then continue the conversation. But you can join us this evening via Facebook and share your thoughts and views on this matter. I know many of you have been following the conversation on social media, have been sharing your thoughts as well. But tonight avails an opportunity for us to really dissect the issues and understand where all the parties are coming from, so as to place the conversation in proper perspective. And so we'll try and re-establish contact and then start the conversation. But whilst you're following the conversation, our WhatsApp line is 02022222067. So you can join us with your thoughts and views through our WhatsApp line, and then also on Facebook as well with the handle ETV Ghana. And your thoughts, if they are shared with me, obviously I would read them live on the show. But even as we wait for Elikem to join us on the show this evening, let me go ahead and read a few lines of the Promotion of Proper Human Sexual Rights and Ghanaian Family Values Bill 2021. It goes on to say that on the 31st of January 2021, several news media in Ghana reported the opening of an LGBTQI+ advocacy resource center in Accra. In attendance at the event were some delegates from the European Union, the Australian High Commissioner to Ghana, and the Danish Ambassador to Ghana. Subsequently, the European Union on its official Facebook handled its advertised participation in the event and reiterated its support for all civil society organizations supporting LGBTQI+ and other groups. But let's go to the phone lines and speak to Most Reverend Philip Name and pick his thoughts on the conversation so far, as we've seen virtually all the religious bodies, supporting this bill to materialize into an act. Reverend, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
I hope you're doing well.
Fine. I hope you are doing well too.
I'm doing well, thanks for asking. So I asked the question, the Catholics' position on the matter of this LGBTQ+ matter. What's your position?
Well, our position has been articulated several times in the media. And it is simply this, that God in his wisdom created a human person in his own image and likeness, and in sexual differentiation. That means God created a human person as man and woman. And he further stated that in their marriage, in their being together, they become one flesh, and they have the mission to produce children. That means the union between man and woman render them collaborators in the further creation of the human species. So any other configuration among human beings is not according to the wisdom of God. And when I mean by any other configuration, I'm simply stating if a man decides to get married to a man just for sexual pleasure, this is sinful. And likewise, a woman deciding to stay with a fellow woman, not just as friends, but also as sexual partners. It is not for this that God created the human person in sexual differentiation. So this is our clear position.
All right, but one would ask that, and the viewers would have to forgive my very explicit tone tonight if I go that path, but it's important for the conversation. If you are talking about, a man and a woman having, that relationship, from the perspective of the church, what constitutes sex?
The question again, what constitutes what?
Sex.
Well, I don't like to have this discussion over the radio. If somebody comes to me like it is in marriage counseling, I can answer that, but not over the radio. I will not talk about that.
Because we are talking about morality, and that's been one of the fundamental issues that's been raised all this while. I heard you use the word sinful. And the reason why I'm asking you to clarify for us from the perspective of the church what sex is to find out whether and viewers forgive my explicit tone this evening, if a man and a wife staying at home, married, may have children, but at some point in time, the man decides to have intercourse with the wife and it's not using the regular sexual organ that we know, but as we know others do, between a man and a woman, what does that also say? When a man does not have sex...
That is not appropriate. That is not appropriate. There is a female sexual organ, and there is a male one. And in God's wisdom, it is the complementarity between the two that facilitates the act of procreation. So if a man decides, instead of the female sexual organ, to penetrate any other organ of the woman, that is not acceptable. It is not in accordance with the wisdom of God in creating man and woman in sexual differentiation.
In that respect, if I may ask, would you support a bill that criminalizes this act between a man and a woman, married?
Between a man and a woman, if it is done in accordance with God's purpose, you cannot criminalize that. It is for this that in God's wisdom they were created. If they decide to do something contrary to God's purpose, then we can talk about sinfulness or even criminality. And that is why I say that our preferred position is if a man and a woman who intend to stay as a couple would come to me, I'm ready to talk in a more exclusively defining terms and all of that, but not over the radio.
Now, those who are against this bill being passed into law are saying that the bishops and the pastors must look within the church. That's where promiscuity abounds the most. Are they not right to say that you should look into the church because there is more sin in there than outside?
This is not verified by any research. What I can only agree with you is that weakness or sinfulness is not a preserve of only the people outside the church. Within the church, there are also human beings. And some can be sinful, some can also be weak. And when the church preaches, it is not preaching for only those outside the church. So it is not any novelty to say that within the church, there are also people who are sinful. Any pastor who preaches for himself as well. So what you are saying is not anything new to the church. We accept the fact that within the church, so long as people remain human beings, they are also sinful. And so when we preach, we are not preaching for only the further conversion of those outside the church, but also those within.
Is it not too harsh a stance that the church has taken on this matter, seeing that we all have sinned and come short of the glory of God?
Yeah, that's what I've just said. So long as we remain human, we are all sinful. And that is what the verse you are quoting is precisely saying. But it does not mean that because the human being is sinful, we can declare some sins as normal. Anything that we believe is sinful and does not please God cannot be accepted by any sector of society as normal. You cannot, on an ongoing basis, want to offend God.
Now, who determines what is sinful and what is not sinful? Who does? Because in this country, there are Muslims in this country, there are traditionalists in this country. Who determines what is sinful?
Well, what I would say is that in spite of the various religious denominations, the scriptures and even what we call natural law have revealed to all human beings what is sinful. All these people you have mentioned, Christians, Muslims, traditional religionists, when they give birth to children and they begin to raise them, all of them teach that it is sinful. It is not permitted for the child to steal. They will tell the child, don't take what does not belong to you or is not given to you. Even some mothers will tell the children, don't take food from anybody that we, the parents, do not know and eat it. So there is a natural convention about what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. So it's not as if one denomination is trying to decide that this offends God and that does not offend God. Any normal human being, coming back to the topic, knows that if a man is having sex with a woman, he will not do that through the anus of the woman, but it will have to be done through the female sexual organ.
Now, I chanced upon a conversation on social media where I would say a supposed Christian was making the case that is it not for us to show mercy to these individuals? After all, the Savior, Christ, did same. Person quotes Zacchaeus, person quotes the prostitute who washed the feet of Jesus Christ with perfume and all. Person quotes all these people and says that even Christ lived amongst them. But how is it that for us, we can't welcome them, but rather we seek to, put laws as barriers to put them in jail?
Please, I didn't hear the last part. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to ask you to repeat.
All right, so what I'm saying is that I chanced upon a conversation on social media where a Christian was advancing the case that it's for the Christian fraternity to show mercy to these people as Christ did. The prostitutes, in the latter days of Christ, when his feet was washed with the tears and perfume of this prostitute, Christ welcomed and sat amongst them. Did he not?
Yeah, he did. He did.
So why are we rather crucifying these individuals rather than welcoming them?
I will also give you one incident what Christ did. Christ witnessed a group of elders who caught a woman in the act of adultery. And according to their law, they were supposed to stone the woman to death. And so they just asked Jesus to test him. We caught this woman in the act of committing adultery. And according to Jewish law, we are to stone her to death. What do you say about this? Jesus' response to the question of the people was, the one who has never sinned, let him throw the first stone. Are you understanding me?
Yes, I am understanding even clearer. So I put it to you then, Reverend, that if you have not sinned, be the first to cast the stone.
So what I have to tell the story to the end.
Okay.
It is not when Christ asked those elders who asked him, let the one who has never sinned throw the first stone. They got up one by one and went away. And Jesus said, the people, where are they? And the woman said, they have gone away. And Jesus said, I too will not condemn you, but go and do not sin anymore. Jesus did not say, because they have gone away, because they recognize that they are sinners, what you did is right. Jesus did not say that. He said, go, but don't sin anymore. So it's not because we are sinners that we cannot recognize sin anymore. We are sinners. But if I identify this as not pleasing to God, it doesn't mean that particular act, because I have also done it, becomes pleasing to God. I still have to deplore the sin without deploring the sinner. And this is what Christ always did. He distinguished between the sin and the sinner.
Reverend.
And we have in our own memo, in the memo of the Ghana Catholic Bishops Conference, we also distinguish between the tendency to be a homosexual and the actual acts of engaging in homosexuality. And this is what we condemn. Not the tendency, not the sin, the tendency to the sin, but committing the sin itself. That is what we say it is wrong, is sinful. We cannot accept it as normal behavior.
Reverend,
but if somebody just says, I feel that I'm born to prefer to have sex with men if I'm a man than with women, that inclination alone doesn't warrant people discriminating against him or even criminalizing him. But if he is engaged in actually doing what displeases God, that is a different matter.
Reverend, I will urge you to hold on for a second for me and let me speak to Elikim, get her reaction to some of the positions that you've held in this conversation. Elikim, if you can hear me, you're welcome. Into some of the points that Reverend made.
Reverend is very calm and telling the story from the Bible, which is so contradictory to what the anti-LGBTQ bill is proposing and the homophobes are actually propagating in Ghana. First of all, I take it from the history of the prostitute and Jesus Christ. In that context, you would see the exhibition of love for a prostitute, which even a law criminalized. And the followers of this person are now reenacting worse than what Jesus, what the men who gathered to stone the woman were about to do. That is quite interesting to hear that Christians are promoting this hate bill. Secondly, when we look at that formation, at the end of of it, Jesus said to the woman, and sin no more. Yes. So who must tell LGBTQ people to go and sin no more? It's not the folks of this country. Every single person will be judged individually at the heaven gate if it so exists. So we are supposed to be left for the judgment day to see who is with God and who is not with God. But then Christians of Ghana actually have killed God and silenced him, and now are taking his battle for him. And so it does not really make sense when Christians use the Bible against LGBT people, whereas they claim they are following a Christ that is all loving unconditionally. Secondly, let's go back into the book of Judges, where a concubine was raped because the people demanded for the master of this concubine to have sex with, which was a similar story in the book of Genesis in Sodom and Gomorrah. So what they consider homosexuality or sodomy, which Christians are holding so much with pride, is not homosexuality. It is actually a rape culture. It's a rape culture. So in the book of Genesis, the people demanded and requested to rape the angels. And in the book of Judges, they demanded again to rape the man who came with his concubine. And then the men said, we cannot allow you to rape this man, but we have our concubine here. Get her, do whatsoever you want to do to her. And she was raped to death. You know, so we actually applaud rape. And the why they did not give in the men is that patriarchy versus patriarchy is battle, it's war. Men are seen as the unit of the universe. So they are the measure by which every other thing is being related. So to define that manliness was the problem. It was not a consensual sex or consensual relationship. So when Christians use Sodom and Gomorrah, they should go back and read very well the account from Ezekiel on Sodom and Gomorrah. The Bible said Sodom, your sister, was destroyed because they were greedy, selfish, wicked, abusive, and they took advantage of the poor and orphans. So Sodom was destroyed on this account, not because they are homosexuals. So that is just a quick response to my Reverend Minister. And when we look at, again, this bill, which from the perspective of Reverend says that it criminalizes anal sex, but between a man and a woman, if these things are happening, it is considered a sin. You know, so why wouldn't this be only limited to the Christian context? I came here, I am not a Christian. And so I should not be bound by a Christian law. I should not be governed by a Christian law. However, Ghana is not a Christian nation. Ghana was built by the spirit of unity in diversity. And so we acknowledge the Islamic religion, traditional religion, and every other religion. Of course, we understood that Christianity came to demonize African traditions and religion. And that's why we are here today battling this, because we don't know about our cultures and traditions. We don't know it. Blackness has been demonized. So everything white is what we have upheld ever since. And now we are thinking that LGBTQ activism or identity is a Western orientation. Never. Of course, the language is a Western academic language because we lost our own languages. So cannot say that because they call the president president, and so he is from America or imported by the British. The name and entitled president is a Western entitlement. It's a Western designation. How would we have called a president in our local language? And that is a similar thing that is happening in the definition of the acronym of LGBTQ. Now, again, the Reverend Minister mentioned procreation. Let me correct that from there, that Christians are
Alikam's line. Okay, Alikam, continue. I can hear you. Your line.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so good. So I was just on the issue of procreation. If Christians are so much holding procreation as another form or reason to criminalize LGBTQ, then I think very soon, a year or two, they will criminalize women who are unable to give birth due to biological or health complications. Because of course, we know that that is happening already, that families are at war because the woman is not giving birth. Nobody is questioning the potency of even this heterosexual man in the marriage. They are thinking about the woman, the woman. The woman is not a baby production machine. And so, if we are looking at it that God created man and a woman, and therefore they must procreate, and if they don't procreate, defile God's arrangement, then we are also saying that women who will not be giving birth are going to be criminalized very soon. LGBTQ persons can equally give birth biologically because a trans woman can give birth, a trans man can give birth, an intersex can give birth, a gay person can decide to give birth, a lesbian can decide to give birth. Giving birth is a priority and it's a choice. It is so different from sexuality and gender.
Let's take the issues you have raised one after the other. It looks like my guest would want to test my biblical understanding, but I'll try my best. Now, tell me, of all the religions you know in this country, which of them supports this whole LGBTQ plus, issue of all the religions in this country?
Well, all the religion I know, I would say, because I was a Christian, so also Christianity actually would have been supporting LGBTQ rights if it is practiced in its fullness. I don't know if you remember the story between Jonathan and David. The love story between Jonathan and David is actually within an LGBTQ identity. A man will fall in love with another man, whether there is a sexual relationship or not. Let us get that clear.
Here.
That you can
now,
have
about David and his friend Jonathan, and you say there was a relationship between them, not just mere friendship between them.
And of course, we are talking about LGBTQ relationship. We are not talking about sex or intercourse. That's one thing we have to get clear. There can be an LGBT person, and you can even be a single person, or you can be an asexual person who is not interested in having sex with any other person. And so, if David and Jonathan's relationship migrated into a very intimate relationship, whether there's an account of sexuality or not, that is an LGBTQ friendship. Now, if we come back to Africa or Ghana, I would want to check that Ghanaians do not have a religion tradition. We have individual cultures, ethnicity, beliefs, norms, and doctrines. And African tradition actually was just a human culture and life. And so it was not necessarily seen as a religion. It's the totality of people. So nobody teaches a child God, African adage, meaning that everyone will discover his or her God or their God based on their encounters. And so you can be in a family where different people, some people worship trees, others worship stone, others worship snail, goat, and so forth. And so based on this account,
what you haven't
we
done
can agree that
is to tell me whether it's a religion, whether it's a faith, any in the country that supports this LGBTQ plus. Can you mention one for me?
Yeah, so African tradition, if we call African tradition and the Ghanaian tradition, some of them supported by accounts LGBTQ rights. The Nzima's one, the accounts, the second one. The point I'm making is that yes, if we acknowledge that African tradition is a religion, then I am saying that the Ghanaian tradition as a religion supported LGBTQ identity and celebrated as pride.
How did that manifest?
one of the manifestation can be found in the Agunwale Ajali marriage, which is reported as a friendship marriage. And men fall in love with men and marry them. And there have been a whole research on this, where even there was a marriage among the Nzima, that the man brought the boyfriend or the husband to Kumasi over here in Ashanti region, where they lived for the rest of their life. And then we can also look at the history of the accounts. There was an account of Ashanti king or chief getting married to another man because he found him attractive and fell in love with this person. And also, when we look at the people who serve the queen, this is very contemporary account that is being given all the time in museum in the past. The people who serve the queen are not women and they are not men. So these people are between the identity of trans people, whether as a transgender person or transsexual person. And these people are referred to in English and in other histories, including Christianity, as eunuchs. So these people are not women and they are not men. And so these are LGBTQ
It is not by
persons.
virtue of their decision. I'm interested in the account where you talk about a chief in the Ashanti Kingdom. You know, which chief was this?
I'm trying to see if I can remember the name, but it was Ansa, yeah, an Assam prince, yeah. Because I didn't, I would have to give you references to these things. But the story was about Ansa, who was hearing on arrival of a good-looking Ashanti prince in one of his own town. So according to the story, he invited him to his house, like they would have done to a woman if you find a woman attractive, and fell in love with this person. And so they were arranged for the male consorts, and that became the marriage between the king, if my pronunciation is correct, is T-S-H-I, Chi kings, yeah, the Chi kings. Yeah, so this is because we also relied so much on oral history, and then the Western religions that demonize our history and tradition, we are unable to actually transfer this knowledge to the younger generation. So most of them are hidden again in the research of colonial masters, which is sunset from our academic spheres.
Take some reaction, but let me say that we are trying to get Honorable Sam George on the line, Member of Parliament for Ningo Prampram. And when we do get him, we would pick his thoughts on the conversation. But Reverend, you've been listening to Elikem advance some, arguments to the effect that even in the case of the popular Sodom and Gomorrah, it wasn't really as a result of their, sexual tastes, but it was as a result of, their sinful nature, and so that could not have been the case. But we also work in the phone lines to get you a historian to put some perspectives to some of the accounts which have been given by Elikem. But all we are doing tonight is to try to understand the story from the different sides, and by talking about the different sides, would look at the legal angle as well. At the moment, if you look at the bill as it stands now, there are those who hold the position that people like Elikem must not be complaining as the law seeks to protect them, and it's boldly enshrined in this bill, and that if it's passed into a law, they are going to be the end beneficiaries. How much of a danger they are in would find out. In terms of numbers, before this whole conversation came, into the public space, does Elikam know the number of people who classify themselves within this group or this cohort? We'll try to understand all of these things live on the show tonight. And so I encourage you, if you have any thoughts, if you have any views at all, you can share them with us. We'll go for a quick commercial break, and then when we come back, we'll continue with the conversation. Back to the conversation live on ETV. This is Fact Sheet. Tonight we're talking about LGBTQ plus issues, the fact that there's a bill in Parliament seeking to virtually criminalize every association with these groups or groupings in the country, and those who are raising the concerns about the fundamental rights of these individuals to associate and to speak freely, and that this law, if this bill is passed into a law, it would criminalize free speech, it would criminalize association, and these individuals would not have the opportunity to live freely. But the conversation is purely being tonight about, the moral value aspect of the conversation, because even the law, that's what it's based on. So I'll just quickly go back to Reverend and ask my final question about the points that Elikam raised, especially when it has to do with, the Sodom and Gomorrah matter, that it wasn't really purely about a matter of they being gays or lesbians or anything, but it had to do with the sinfulness of the people and their stubbornness. Reverend, if you are on air, let me take your reaction to some of the points that Elikam made.
I'm not sure that I fully grasp the contributions of the one you were asking me to comment on. I had challenges with hearing.
Okay.
So basically, what were the points that he made that you want me to comment on?
She made a specific point about how, for instance, in the case of Sodom and Gomorrah, it wasn't necessarily because of their gay tendencies, but it was because the nation itself was sinful.
Well, what I will say is that the nation itself was sinful. I could agree with that. But it doesn't also say that the sin in particular was also a question of disrespecting the order of God in terms of sexual relationships. Because that one too is a sin. If you accept that the nation itself was sinful, the sin could also have been homosexuality.
Okay.
It is not specified, but it could also have been that. And therefore, if God would destroy Sodom and Gomorrah because of immorality, especially sexual immorality, then it connects well with our present debate. That you asked earlier on a question, who determines what is sinful? The order of what is sinful and what is not sinful is a preserve of only human beings of all God's creation. Animals do not have, do not worry about what is sin and what is not, because it's only the human beings that have a certain consciousness, and a consciousness also about their relationship with the Creator, and therefore also reckon with punishment if they do things that displeases the Creator. And the history of Scripture has made us to know that anytime God's people disobeyed Him and did things which were not pleasing to Him, He punished them. And there's not only one punishment. It could be exile, it could be letting enemy countries lord over them and things like that. And so the question of morality, which is one of the things we are saying that the LGBT thing is an immoral action among human beings who should try in their relationship with one another, and especially in their sexual relationship, to keep an order which was created by God. So this is what I will say. The LGBT thing should serve also as a warning against sober humanity. And let us not place it in the order of rights. It is not in the order of rights, because you as a journalist will know that the European Court of Justice of Human Rights in Strasbourg, France, have decreed that homosexuality is not a human right. This was clearly decreed. It's not a human right. And so we cannot say that people are being denied this and that. The human rights that we have in our memo decreed that homosexuals as human persons should not be discriminated against are those rights which are common for all human beings. The right to freedom, the right to water, to health, and all of those things. But the right to have a sex different from what God has ordained it to be is not a human right. It's not a human right.
Reverend, talking about rights, let me read what a texter just sent to me and see your reaction to it. The texter says that the Reverend Minister hasn't got the moral right to be speaking on this matter, as the Catholic Church itself has been rocked in time past severally with scandals all to do with sexual immorality. What would be your response to this texter?
Well, I think I've already responded to this. It is not because there is sin within the Catholic Church that it should not know the clear line between what is sin and what is not sin. What he says is true. We accept that. There is also sin within the Catholic Church, but we are taking steps to eliminate it. And the Pope, beginning with the Pope, he has been very clear that no bishop should cover up any sexual sins committed by the clergy. And measures have been put in place to ensure that those sins, if allegations come, should be investigated. And if it is found that it is true, those clergy involved will not be permitted to minister as clergy again. So these are measures that the church is putting in place to ensure that the sinfulness of the clergy is not just endemic or overlooked. We are dealing with ourselves. But that is not a reason why we have to say that because there is sin also within the Catholic Church, we should not be clear enough to know what constitutes sin and what does not.
Reverend, I thank you for making time to join us tonight on the show. And let me also sincerely apologize to our viewers who join us tonight, expecting that we would have the Honorable Samuel Nate George on the show with us, seeing that he's one of the sponsors of the bill that's in Parliament today. We were unable to have that conversation with him, and so we sincerely apologize to our viewers for inability to have him on the show. But let me give the final bite to Elikem and then ask for the wrap-up comment from Elikem. Elikem, let me just take your wrap-up comments before the show ends. With the way things are going, do you see this bill becoming a law in the country? That's fine, Reverend. That's fine, Reverend. Um, could you kindly check the microphone of your uh, phone so that we can continue the conversation? We hardly can hear you. Can you hear me? Uh, I hear you, but the sound is not coming through. If you could just raise your voice a little and unmute as well. If you're muted your microphone, if you could unmute as well for me. No. All right. You hear me clearly? All right. A bit of a challenge with Elikem's line as well, but time is not also our friend tonight because I would need to make way for Girl Vibes to come your way tonight, and it's all about, breast cancer. You know, we're in the month of October, and so the emphasis and the focus is on breast cancer tonight, and so we'll get a bit of education from our ladies even as they tell us more. What we should look out for, how we should examine our bodies as ladies and even as men as well. But I would like to thank my guest, Elikem, for joining me tonight. Elikem Fiache is an activist for the LGBT community in Ghana. And then Reverend Name also joined us. Unfortunately, we could not get Samuel Natty George on the show tonight. But on that note, I'd like to thank every one of you for being a part of the show and apologize for the bad network we had with that of Elikem, so we could take her final submission before the show comes to an end. But I'm grateful. My name is Samuel Ishen, and on behalf of the production team, I say good night.